Meeting over to Clara Ann Graham, our voter service chair. Clara Ann?
Yes. It clicked over to recording. Everything okay now?
Yeah, and if people could mute during the presentation, that would be great, except for obviously Sarah Clarion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tommy, for coming. I would like to introduce you to our Lee County Supervisor of Election, Tommy Doyle. Tommy Doyle is a longtime resident of Lee County with a deep-rooted passion for the county's history and traditions. His fundamental belief in our representative form of government led him to run for office. He was elected Supervisor of Election in November 2016 and took office in January of 2017. His desire to strengthen the values of outstanding customer service to the citizens of Lee County and emphasize fiduciary responsibility in election budget management has brought forth innovative and excellence in the day-to-day operations of Lee County Election Office. He has made it a top priority to safeguard the security of the office network databases, computer science systems, and elections by ensuring an ongoing commitment to coordinating enhanced systems security practices. The office reinforces its dedication to secure elections and the voters of Lee County. Since being elected, he has provided for the restructuring of all election office departments, thereby elevating and creating additional levels of service provided to the citizens of Lee County. Tommy is a graduate of Bishop Barrow High School. He is a United States Air Force veteran and spent 4 years in Tampa, where he worked as for the Joint Command as an airborne radio operator at MacDill Air Force Base. He later attended the University of West Florida, where he earned a bachelor's degree in accounting. Tommy actively supports the community as a member of the Fort Myers Rotary Club and serves annually on the allocation board of the United Way for Lee County. In 2018, through Tommy's positive leadership, the Lee County election chose to partner with Valerie House, a not-for-profit organization based in Fort Myers. Tommy and his wife, Donna, have been married since 1987. They have 3 children, and in 2017 were blessed with their first grandchild. Mr. Doyle, would you please, we will have question and answers after your speech. And then anyone can submit their questions to the chat, through chat, or you can raise your hand at time of question and answer. Mr. Doyle, thank you for joining the League of Women Voters of Lee County today.
Thanks for having me. I think I know one of the main subjects for today was Senate Bill 90 and some questions about that. But before we discuss that, let's talk about what our office is doing preparing for the 2022 election cycle. As you know, we just went through redistricting and reapportionment. The county has approved their maps. All the municipalities are in the process of approving their maps. And we're waiting for congressional districts to be approved by the state legislature. And that'll be completed by March 11th when the session closes. Since the approval of the map by the county, we have been moving our precinct lines, and we've decided that we're going to reduce our precincts from 127 to 125. That sounds drastic, but we've already consolidated nearly 24 precincts since the pandemic in order to reduce voting sites as it is. So it's not as drastic as it seems. And with the dynamic of vote by mail, where almost 80% of the people vote before election day, either early vote or vote by mail. We think this is going to be a more efficient process. Not only that, we're renaming all our precincts. So all our precincts will begin with the Board of County Commissioner district number. So it's an average of 20 precincts per district. In District 1, you'll have 101 to 120, District 2, 201 to 220, and that's how they'll be named. That's will be much easier for candidates, clubs to find those precincts because they'll know what district they get to go look for them. With that said, with that naming that way, we cannot have a precinct crossing over district lines. We got to maintain every precinct inside those district lines. And we're waiting on the congressional approval. And so we may have to try to move precinct lines to eliminate what we call splits. Splits are another ballot style because there may be a fire district or a CDC that will require another ballot style. As we can eliminate more of them as we can, it'll help us out reducing ballot styles. Like for instance, 2020 primary election, we had 500 and some different ballot styles that we had to deal with and print and make and proof and make sure we got everything right. And this is the biggest part of it, getting everybody in the right precinct, in the right district, to make sure they get the right ballot. It's the process. And because of redistricting and because of this, new voter cards will be sent to every single registered voter, and that's over 500,000 voter cards will probably go out in May or June before the primary election in August. Another thing that that we were doing in 2020, there was a lawsuit that one of the plaintiffs was the Florida Council of the Blind. And this lawsuit, there was a settlement made between all the supervisor elections and to implement an accessible vote process for visually impaired voters. And what this does, it allows us to deliver a ballot to a visually impaired voter to where they can vote in private on their computer at home. They will need to have the software, whatever, depending on their level of disability, they will have to have the software, whether it's in large screen or earphones to mark this ballot. And what this is it's a marking device, not a voting device. So the voter will go in and they'll have to sign up for this service. Their ballot will be delivered to them electronically. They will mark their ballot. Then they will have to print their ballot and put it in a secrecy envelope and sign the certificate just like any other voter, and then mail it back to us. And there was a pilot, 5 counties was in a pilot program in 2020 to see how this would work. The big secret to get it to work right is an outreach program. So we will partner with the Southwest Florida Council of the Blind, the Lighthouse, which is another association that deals with visually impaired voters. And we'll reach out to them to make sure we can get this implemented. And in fact, we just started the process this past week with our vendor to start the process and we should be able to start taking requests probably in the 1st of May. So another thing we are doing, we are in the planning and designing stages to open a branch office in Lehigh Acres, one of the most, it's the high growth area. It's underserved. There's no supervisor elections out there. We found the building. The county has bought the building. The tax collector is going to move in there also. Health department's going to move in there, and hopefully we will be in there by August. But you know, that's probably optimistic, but I'm going to remain optimistic because it will be an early voting site and probably a precinct site to vote at. Those who live in Lehigh, this is over on the corner of Milwaukee and Homestead. It's a beautiful building, and I'm excited about getting it going and having people working out there and serving those citizens in Lehigh Acres. So before we go to SB 90, is there any questions so far? You know, if they got questions, you could type them on the chat mark, and we could get them to the end without everybody talking. But let's go to SB 90. Of course, SB 90, Senate Bill 90, is the new election law that was passed, I think, in May of last year. And we, because of SB 90, the Secretary of State, Governor DeSantis, was sued by several plaintiffs, one being the League of Women's Voters. And every supervisor of elections was sued in that hearing. That hearing it was almost over 2 weeks, that trial, I guess you call it a trial, it's a hearing with the judge in Tallahassee. And now judge they just put the final briefs in last week, and the judge will make his ruling soon, I hope. And I'm not sure what he's going to do, but let's just to refresh your memories, the main topics of the suit was secure drop boxes, voter registration applications, vote by mail applications, and line warming restrictions. So those are the main topics that most of the plaintiffs were fighting against. For instance, secure drop box restrictions. Before I go any further, I want to say that my goal and my office's goal is that most voters will never even realize that SB 90 went into effect. We will still have secure drop boxes. We will still have drive-through drop boxes like we had in 2020, which was very popular. In fact, 100,000 ballots were dropped off at drop boxes in 2020. We'll still have drop boxes before and after early voting. So not a whole lot's changed. What's really changed is that as a voter, you can only possess 2 ballots besides your own, plus any immediate family members. That's one restriction they put on that. And the other restriction is they included drop boxes in the solicitation zone. So there's 150-foot no solicitation zone in the drop boxes. Those are the main changes as far as drop boxes, and you have to have them monitored by in person, which we did anyway. I did have in 2020, I think I had a 24-hour drop box monitored by video for 2 days over a weekend. And I couldn't sleep at night. In fact, that Sunday morning, I went to the office to check on that drop box. It was so full that that people could have reached in and grabbed the ballot. It's coming out of the mail slot. And so I eliminated that, and it just didn't feel secure to me. And even though it was a popular thing, it didn't seem to upset too many people. The other thing is voter registration requiring, this would affect the League of Women's Voters, third-party organization. People that go out and get registration to vote, that they first of all, they increase the time to get the registrations back to the office. Used to be 48 hours, now it's 14 days. It also, what they were really against the League of Women's Voters was that they had to inform the voter if they couldn't get their registration in time before book closing. They'd have to inform the voter. They'd also have to inform the voter that, other ways to register the vote if that was the case. And that may have increased the fines. I I don't recall, to $1,000. But there's a new law in the session now that is increasing voter fraud fines to $50,000. That's yikes. But when you go back to drop boxes, the most thing that stood out to me in the new law was they're going to fine me personally $25,000 if I leave a drop box unmonitored in person. So that kind of stood out to me. So I'm going to handcuff I started a new position, drop box monitor. I'm going to handcuff them to the drop boxes, so wherever they go, the drop box goes with them. That's a joke. Of course, another thing was the plaintiffs were concerned about were the new ID requirements for voter registration and for requesting vote by mail. And when it comes to requesting vote by mail, they're concerned about the requesting after every general election. It used to be after every second general election. In the beginning of the bill, it was every year, which was ridiculous. After every general election, it still may be problematic in the beginning, but you think about it, every single voter will be on the same cycle. It may be easier for them to remember to request their vote by mail after every general election. Most people don't remember when they requested or if their request is expired. And that's why, and we still send out letters to every voter who requests vote by mail that is going to expire. We will send them a notice and reminder to re-request. And besides those four things, the SB 90 did a lot more. I mean, it was a big bill. There's observation of duplication that we have to provide for observers. And we're in the process of setting up monitors that observers, when I say observers, it's not the public. These are qualified observers like poll watchers that come in and can actually watch the duplication process. And there's an objection protocol if an observer wants to object to a certain duplication, that then it would be, there's a process of paperwork they'd have to fill out, just like somebody attesting at a poll watcher at a voting site that would test somebody voting at election day or early voting. And so then there's also what we're implementing protocols for is observation of voting materials. Before canvassing, observers can come in. They have to request this. They have to be scheduled to come in and look at ballot materials like signatures on envelopes, affidavits for cure affidavits, and other items that may be considered election materials. And these are things that will affect me more than the voters. And our goal is not to have anything filibuster our processes and slow us up in getting our ballots tabulated. Those are the main things. I can't think of something right now that would affect the voters. So you got the secure drop boxes, the added ID requirements, and the third-party organizations registering people to vote. I know there may be a lot of questions. We have a short fact sheet on our website on SB 90 and the results and effects of some of these things. You could go to our lead.vote and look at that, or ask me questions right now, and I'll see if I can answer them.
All right, we have this is Eileen, 3 questions in the chat. And so I'll represent the question, and if the participant would like to add. So Mary Beth Gentleman asked, is the new Lehigh Acres early voting site an additional site or a substitute for another site?
Well, right now we're thinking that it's going to be a new site, and the Veterans Park may be eliminated. This site's about 3 miles away. Veterans Park is not a good site. It's hard to get to. Parking is not good. And so we're thinking about eliminate that when we get this site going.
All right, thank you. And then from Maddie Stewart, what are the financial implications of Senate Bill 90 for the supervisors of elections? Do you have the funding?
Well, luckily we do have the funding. When we did our budget, we submitted our budget in May, I think, soon after Senate Bill 90 was signed by the governor, and we knew it was going to be signed. So we did put things in our budget that will handle the extra mailing, the protocols necessary for the duplication process. And there's other things we probably forgot, but we do have the funding.
Then, thank you, from Dwight Esmond, do Bonita Springs City Council district boundaries have to match up with county precinct boundaries? Or can you split a precinct for a city vote?
Yeah, so when you talk about Bonita, they haven't got their map approved yet. They sent me a map, but I couldn't, to ask me how it will affect the precinct voting. But the form they sent it, I can't really tell. I need a different file, and hopefully I'll get that next week. The precincts are not, will be inside the district. The district maps in Bonita doesn't have to match to the county commission districts, no.
All right, thank you. From Lana Cow, what is the percentage age of rejected vote by mail applications in Lee County? And then are you able to get them corrected? And how do you do it? We had this
So,
problem in
I understand the
Cuyahoga County.
questions. So if I understand the questions, they're asking how many people we reject a vote by mail request.
Application.
I don't have that number in front of me, but we will, if we will mail or call the voter and try to get the information we need and kind of, push them along and help them and educate them how they can solve or cure that problem. Today we have nobody's being rejected.
Lana, does that answer your?
What does he mean today? We don't have any being rejected?
I mean, as far any rejections that have come in since this bill, we have not rejected anyone from getting a vote by mail ballot.
Application. Okay.
Yes.
Ballot.
You've been able to resolve it then?
Yes.
Got it.
All right, thank you. For Murray Newton, we understand you do regular list maintenance in which you remove inactive voters. Is there a schedule for this, like monthly or quarterly?
Well, it's a whole protocol. So when we do, for instance, trying to figure out an example, our list maintenance is every day, but our big list maintenance we do in the odd years. We take a file from the National Change of Address Association that has all the address, and we process those. And then we also are members of ERIC, Electronic Registration Information Center, that cross-references member states with people who are registered in 2 states, people who may have like dual registrations. And we've been processing those also. And we get that information every quarter during an off year. I think they have stopped now, getting so close to the election time. And how this works is if we have somebody that may, if we send a mail to anyone, even if it comes back non-deliverable, because a lot of our mailings aren't forwardable. If it comes back non-delivered, we will send out an address verification form that is forwardable. If the voter gets it and sends it back and says, yes, that's my address, then they will remain on the rolls as an active voter. If it comes back again, we will send them a final notice. And if we don't hear from the voter in 30 days, he will be put on inactive. Now, a voter is on inactive status for 2 general elections. Inactive, all that means is if you do anything, interact with our office and change anything on your registration, signing a petition, or voting, you become active again. If you're inactive for 2 general elections, you become ineligible, and that means you'll have to re-register to vote. And that's the basic processes that we use.
So Murray, did you have any follow-up questions on that?
Well, I did, thank you. Just the reason I asked, Tommy, is that you helpfully have on your website a running count of the number of registered voters by party. And occasionally, as just a few days ago, it takes big drops, I think 8,000, if I remember rightly. So it looks like periodically there are some big changes that are at least registered in your running count. And that's what made me wonder whether there was some schedule to it.
Yeah, so that schedule is going to go. The ERIC is will be ongoing, and the new law that's in session now will we'll have to do the NCOA every year instead of every other year, and that's the reason that big drop. Those numbers are active voters, so a lot of inactive voters are taken off of that, and once they can become back active again. But that's why you're seeing those drops and changes, because we are doing list maintenance and taking inactive voters off that population.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question from Carolyn Moore. What is the status of the voting sites that were eliminated or removed in the Dunbar area? Will they be replaced, or is the problem a site location?
Do we have specific locations? Because I don't know what locations they're referring to. Since I've been here, I don't remember. I think the only one that I can think of is that before I came, there was the Chandler Hall site. And I think we stopped going there because of there was vandalism, and also the Imaginarium site. Nobody showed up there, so that's why those were eliminated. We did add early voting site at the Kerry Robinson Center, and we're going to keep that site. Added another site. So this coming election cycle, we'll have 12 sites. We did eliminate the Riverside Recreational Center down in Fort Myers. That's the least visited early voting, but we're moving back over to the regional library downtown, which is a very popular site.
Carolyn, does that address the first part? There's another question from Carolyn. Right, not hearing. The second
Yeah,
question.
that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, great. Will there be drop boxes in the Dunbar area?
At all the early voting sites will be drop boxes. So the Kerry Robinson Center will have a drop box, and then the downtown library center will have drop boxes, and my main office will have a drop box in the downtown area. We're only allowed to have we can have drop boxes anywhere, but logistically doesn't make sense to put drop boxes all over town because they all have to be monitored in person.
Yeah.
So we can't have drop boxes at precincts. That's not allowed by state law. So the drop boxes are main office, branch offices, and early voting sites.
Great. From Bill Hamilton, the question is, what are the qualifications to be a poll watcher?
To have a smartphone. If you have a flip phone, you don't. If you go on our website, they have kind of the qualifications. There is like a pre-test that you can do. If you can stand, walk upright, and talk to people, you qualify, and have a little technical knowledge. That's why I'm making a joke about the flip phone.
Okay. From Mary Beth Gentleman, if a person brings in more than 2 ballots, aside from their immediate family and self, will your office accept those ballots? And if not, what would happen to those ballots?
We will accept them. I'm not a police officer. I'm not. I'm not going to question the voters. And I will train our Dropbox monitors. They will not question a voter. That's up to somebody else, like somebody coming in, like a poll watcher or another citizen, and complain to law enforcement because it's actually a breaking law. But I'm not questioning it. No.
And then from Dwight Esmond, I believe this was related to the Bonita Springs question. To follow up and confirm that I understand your response, you will draw the precinct boundaries to match a city's district boundaries once you have received the city's district boundaries. Is that?
Yes, and now, now that he asked that question, I'm not sure if our precincts will cross the Bonita district boundaries, and it may create a split. That's a possibility, because we can only we don't want to get precincts that are too large and cause lines at the voting centers. And once we get our precinct lines changed, those all have to be approved by the county commissioner before they go into effect.
And from Karen McJunkin, an important question for Florida residents. Should voters who live in another state during the summer notify your office of their alternate address to avoid non-deliverable mail?
Yes, and we will send out a mailing to every person who requested a vote by mail to make sure you have the address you want that ballot sent to.
At this point, thank you. At this point, there are no additional questions in the chat. If you'd like to either on your screen, raise your hand or ask additional questions in the chat.
I see a hand.
Lana, go ahead. Unmute.
Okay. I guess I asked it. It was, do you have on your website, do you have the, do you do a tally of the number of ballots requested, vote by mail ballots requested and the number rejected on the website?
No, I don't think it's on the website. Now,
Okay,
if you,
because we do
I
that.
think in 2020, the number is usually under 1%. And those are rejected because we couldn't reach the voter to tell him the cure process, or the voter just did not cure his efficiency. And most efficiencies are, they forgot to sign it, the signature doesn't match. It's the two reasons that, and what we call that, we reject those preliminary. And as soon as that we reject the deficiency, the voter is sent a first-class mailing. If we have their phone number, we call them. If we have their email address, we email them, and we give them instructions on how to cure the deficiency. And they have Thursday after the elections to cure that deficiency. And normally, to cure it, all they got to do is send back a copy of the driver's license. And then they sign their form. That form is used as a signature update also. So hopefully in the future, their signatures will stay updated.
Are your vote by mail applications found both online and also do you mail them?
We're pushing everybody to do online. Now we will have a mailing going out, call our official election notice pretty soon, and it's actually a paper website, and we have barcodes in all our mailings now that you can scan that, take you right to the page to request your vote by mail. And we do, and you can go on a website, print out an application and fill it out and send it to us also. Or you can call the office and request one, and we will send you one.
And
So you don't mail them. Do you mail them out automatically to anyone? I'm trying to remember what we do.
No, we don't mail them out automatically.
Okay.
Then there's a question from Mary Beth Gentleman.
Hi, Tommy, thank you very much for all this great information, much appreciated. You mentioned that one of your goals is to avoid, having the voting process filibustered. I'm particularly worried about the SB 90 provision that calls for observers to be able to observe signature match and cure affidavit processing and so forth. And you mentioned in your opening remarks that you're going to have that the right to observe by request, and there'll be some schedule to it. Could you say a little bit more again about how that will work?
Well, the requester will have to identify what they want to see, and they will have a limited amount of time to see that before canvassing, because it has to be done before canvassing. And I'm not sure we're going to do this every single day, but we'll have a limited amount of time, and they will have to be definite what they want to look at. We're thinking about that what we might do, because what happens, we'll come in and we'll check signatures. And we may, those signatures, we may include a signature snapshot and the certificate. So bring in, the observers can look at those before they go to canvassing. We're still working on those protocols. It's kind of crazy, but now when we say observers, these observers they have to be representatives from a party, from a candidate, or from a committee. It's just not anybody from the public.
And if they if they object to the judgment of the staff as to whether or not a signature matched, could you say again what the process is that they'll have to go through?
As far as the vote by mail, that ballot will be adjudicated to the canvassing board, and the canvassing board will look at that and decide. It's a majority of the canvassing board, 3 people on the canvassing board, which is the supervisor of elections, county commissioner, and county judge. And the county judge is the chairman, and the canvass board will look at that and decide if that signature matches or does not. Canvassing board is the only people that can reject a signature. So if a staff members reject a signature, they all go to the canvassing board. All rejections, all deficiencies go to the canvassing board, and they are the only one that can verify that rejection.
And does the objection have to be in writing?
By the observer, we will have a form that they can fill out for their reason for objection.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you. We have a question from Sandy Frank. Please describe the process for receiving and counting provisional ballots.
So if you come to the polls and we can't verify you as a registered voter, or you forgot your ID, you will be able to vote a provisional ballot. And when you vote that ballot, you will be given a form that states how you can cure the process and what time limits you have. You can come in before after the election, before 5 o'clock Thursday, and make sure that your provisional is counted because you have the proper ID. When those provisional ballots come back, they are vetted through a staff member will look at those, check the registrations, check the signatures on the provisional form. And most of the time, if somebody forgot their driver's license, those provisional ballots are accepted and counted. And they all go before the canvassing board. So for instance, if we have 1,000 provisional ballots and we have 500 that are accepted, My staff will come in front of the canvassing board and said, these are all acceptable provisional ballots. Give us permission to tabulate them. Now, a lot of times canvassing board will look through a few of them, but they all are good. So they will give us permission to start tabulating those provisionals. Then we go through the ones that there's signature mismatches, people who registered after book closing, people who are not registered voters, and those kind of reasons they will be rejected. And most of the reasons are they registered after book closing or they're not registered voters.
Thank you.
Did I answer that question?
Sandy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Lana, your hand is raised. Did you have another question? Okay.
I have my question.
Oh, Claire Ann? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Doyle, I noticed in the proposed Senate Bill 524, one of the goals is set, it says adding additional steps to vote by mail. Are you aware what these additional steps are?
I think they took it out. I believe the last amendment took this process out where you'd we would have to send you a package that it would require a PIN number. You would be issued a PIN number, or not a PIN number. That's another. You would have to include your Florida ID, Florida driver's license number, or your last four, your social security number on the certificate. But we include another envelope if this passes, that you would stick your certificate in to hide that information and mail back to us. But I think if I read today or yesterday that doesn't mean it won't still be there, but there was an amendment in process to take that out where we wouldn't have to send 3 envelopes to you.
Thank you.
Then, oh, sorry, I'm starting to get active. Let's see. Bill Hamilton has a question regarding Supervisor of Election needs for volunteers. Bill, do you want to elaborate? That was sent in by Kim.
Okay, so volunteers, our volunteers are all paid. So we don't accept free volunteers for anything. Our poll workers are paid. Our vote by mail board are paid. And if you're interested in work, say for vote by mail, these are people who come in, open the envelopes, lay the ballots out, and get them prepped for tabulation. We use temporary services. You have to go through a temp service, and can't remember the service from now. You call the office and ask them, and you go fill out your application and tell them you're going to work for the election board. And they will, so when time comes, we will ask for, in the beginning, we're probably going to ask for 30 or 4 temps to come up and work in the vote by mail layout board. And as time goes on, less mail comes in, that will dwindle. So we have openers, we have layout. I mean, it's a whole process. We have quality control to make sure we don't leave anything in the envelopes. We're going to be scanning those envelopes after they're opened and the ballots are removed. So it's a big job. We're going to be hiring at least 40 temporary staff to help with that process.
Does that answer your question?
I think the temporary service that we use is Asperian, is the name of the company.
All right. Thank you. From Carolyn Moore, there are or were 2 voting polls in Cape Coral that are neighbors, and voters confuse the correct voting poll. They share parking lots. Why are they so close together? Or can one be eliminated as a cost saving in order to avoid confusion?
I hope so. Haven't seen the new precinct lines or voting sites. We still haven't identified them all, but I have with my operations manager talking about trying to eliminate some of those sites where they are confusing. I think the biggest problem is those voting sites are very small, and that's why they had them so close together, because they didn't want to create lines. But I think with the dynamics, if you're thinking back to 2012 and before, the dynamics has changed so dramatically that those sites will probably be one site now. But I can't guarantee, I don't know yet, but I think so.
Thank you. At this point, I believe I've asked all the questions that are in the chat. If not, please raise your hand or raise your hand to continue the questions. Lana Powell.
Unmute.
Yeah, Secretary of State up in Florida up for reelection.
Secretary of State's appointed by the governor. They don't, they're not, it's not an elected seat. They're talking about possibly having a initiative on the ballot to elect the Secretary of State, but right now it's appointed by the governor.
And what is their term? Do they have a 1-year term, 2-year?
Well, it depends on the governor. If the governor keeps getting reelected, they'll stay in there. If we get a new governor, say if we get a Democratic governor, the Secretary of State probably will change.
That's right.
Or if we get a new Republican governor, Secretary of State could change also.
Thank you.
You know, we're talking about the changing these precinct numbers and the processes, and there's so many moving steps. You know, we've got to go through and we've got to change, renumber all our racks, all our ballot storage, all our tabulators, all our e-poll pads. Everything's got to be renumbered, and we are in the process of doing that now. Most of the renumbering has been completed in operations. We're renumbering our ballot storage and our vault this past week, and that process will continue and be ready for election. There's so many moving parts. It's mind-boggling sometimes. Another thing we have to do while you guys are quiet is that we have to do all new precinct signs. Think about it. You know, not only early voting signs of 12 locations, we'll have 100 locations. We'll have to redo all our signs that are posted on the road, directing people to the precincts. There will be precinct, whatever, 504 with the arrow showing you where to go. All those signs will have to be changed. We have picked a style. Basically, it's aluminum. I think it's 2x3 or something like that, and there'll be a decal put over it. But there's 100 of those or more that will have to be processed and made.
And as representatives of the League of Women Voters of Lee County, I wanted to remind all attendees, and you can share this information, that the League of Women Voters of Lee will be developing voter guides and convening forums for the 2022 election. All are encouraged to submit possible questions for candidates via email to the address lwvlee@lwvlee.org. I'll repeat that, lwvlee@lwvlee.org. And the online guide will be Vote 411.
So, you know, another thing SB90 did was, you know, candidates would sign up to run as a no party affiliate, and they would go right to the general election. If you run as a Democrat or as a Republican, you have to be in that party for 1 year before qualifying in order to run as a Democrat, Republican. SB90 made that change that you will have to be registered as an NPA 1 year before qualifying also. So you won't have these MPAs jumping in the race just to get on and bypass the primary election.
Here is another question from Murray Newton. What role did the supervisors of elections play in shaping Senate Bill 90?
Well, when Senate Bill 90 first was proposed, it eliminated drop boxes altogether. That was one of the worst things that was in that bill. And it got better and better because the supervisors of elections, our Florida Supervisors Elections Association got involved, our lobbyists got involved, and we pushed hard against a lot of the stuff that would make drop boxes altogether so difficult that it wouldn't be useful. You know, they wanted once they put the drop boxes in, they wanted to have the supervisor check IDs when you drop the boxes off. If you had somebody else's drop, you'd have to fill out a attestation form attesting that this is your relative, and it just got so muddled up. And finally, the final bill came out where most of it is, like I said, our goal is the voters won't even realize SB 90 even exists. I think the voter ID requirements with last four, so we are asking voters to put both on their applications, or so that, because we verify you by those numbers. That way, if you don't have one, you have the other. It'll be easy verification for us. So we also had we identified 3,000 voters who had no ID on their applications. We sent out letters to all those, and we cured about 1,000, and that's still in process. 3,000 is a very good number. When I hear Pinellas County, Leon County, Orange County, they're in the 30 and 40,000 voters without any ID on there. And I think we can go back to several supervisor elections before me. Their staff members took it on themselves on an off year to go through these registrations to get at least the Florida driver's license number or Florida ID on those applications. And that was done by a voter registration director back in the 90s. And a lot of those numbers, a lot of those people who registered back before 1995, I think, didn't require a Florida voter driver's license on the application. And this is why they're missing off the files of so many voters.
I wanted to double check with, thank you, Mary Beth, gentlemen. I got an indicator that you had raised your hand. Do you still have a question?
I do, thanks. Quickly, when I wanted to understand a little bit better the signature cure process that you use. Let's say someone comes to vote and their signature doesn't match the signature that you have on file, and they provide a cure affidavit and more ID and so forth, and you're satisfied, you know, that person is that person. Does the signature that they give you on the affidavit, the cure, does that become their new signature on file, or how do they avoid having this problem again?
Yeah, when this is only in vote by mail. It's when somebody's vote by mail comes back and they're rejected by the staff. Yeah, if they send a cure affidavit in with the tier 1 identification, which is the driver's license or Florida ID, that signature on that affidavit becomes a updated signature for the voter. Now, with that said, when we get a ballot envelope in with a signature on it, and we have, every time a voter interacts with our office and signs something, we will put that signature in their file. So we could have 8 different signatures. And a lot of times we go back to the original application, which was done in 1999, and that signature matches. So we're not looking at just one signature, because we have the e-poll pad signatures, which is done with a stylus or your finger. Of course, those are on the file sometimes, and those are hard to match. But if, like I said, we'll look at several signatures and try to match that signature as best we can. Our job is to err on the side of the voter, not the other way around.
And do you get signatures from other agencies in your file, or no?
Yeah, well, from the Department of Motor Vehicles, when you go and change your address and you get a new driver's license, we'll get that signature.
Okay. All right. In a perfect world, one of the beauties of early voting is that you can be from any precinct, and you go to an early voting site and you can vote. Why don't we do that on election day?
Yeah, why not? So we have been for several years now, since I've been in office, every year we have proposed to legislators to allow us to have vote centers, do away with precinct voting. Now, you can still be in a precinct, we can still report precinct reports. However, it'll be just like early voting. What we would like to do is have a voting period. We wouldn't eliminate election day. What we would do is, it'd be like early voting from this day till it ends on election day, and you can vote at any site. We would eliminate, we would do super centers, have large centers, as probably reduce our voting sites by 50 or more, and you could vote at any site. Yes, we would love to see that. Now, some supervisors, it would be the optional of the supervisors, because small counties, with the 5 precincts, they don't need that. So we're making it optional. And there's a lot of good arguments against it, but I think we can overcome that. And I'm hoping that we see that in the near future.
Thanks.
That was a good question.
Oh my God, I didn't.
You know what?
Okay, Eileen.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna just, when you do a request in person or telephonically, I don't think you're required to have your verification IDs. In person, you just bring you'll have your voter. When you come in person, you would have your ID with you. So you can come in person and request a vote by mail also, without filling out an application.
Eileen, do you see any more questions?
Let me just do one more check. No more in the chat, and I do not see any raised hands. So if people do have a question, but I do not see any.
Okay, thank you.
We have a bill that's in the legislature now pushing for forensic audit, which I have no idea what that is when it comes to elections. I think it's a made up word, but our protocols are, we have the strictest election laws in the United States, and our protocols are so stringent that it's very difficult to, they're talking about manipulating tabulation machines and stuff like that. It's just literally impossible. Tabulators are not on the internet. You can't access them from the outside. Before election comes, our first step is to code our election equipment to tabulate all our ballot styles. And when we get that coding done, our ballot, we probably print out about 10,000 test ballots, and we test every machine over and over again. And how this test works, we actually vote those 10,000 ballots, and we know what the predetermined outcome is. And we'll go through every machine and do that and print out our results tape and compare them to the results we should have. Then we also take a portion of those machines for early voting, for election day, for vote by mail tabulation. And we test those in front of the canvassing board, and the public is invited to watch that test. That test considers tabulate. We know what's the outcomes should be. And that test goes all the way from opening the polls to closing the polls, sending the results to our central tabulation center, and verifying that results match what the tabulators have tabulated. Then, after the election, after we certify the election, we have a post-audit certification of the equipment, which we randomly choose a race, pull it out of the hat, and then we randomly choose 2 precincts. Those ballots are gathered, and they're set up in several different reporting aspects. They have election day, early voting, vote by mail, and provisionals. And those ballots are all counted by hand, and they are compared to the tabulation of the equipment and make sure they're matched. Our 2020 post audit was perfect. But we also take all the tapes from the tabulators and we reconcile those before that post audit and make sure that the tapes match the election night results. So there's a lot of work involved to make sure that everything's counted accurately.
And it's quite an operational marvel. And Lana Cal has an additional question. Unmute, please.
Unmute.
That was an addition. That was the previous question.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
Oh.
You can take
Mr.
the
Doyle. This is Clara Ann, and I want to thank you for participating today and taking a portion of your Saturday morning to enlighten us and also to answer questions of concern to the League of Women Voters of Lee County members.
Well, I appreciate it. And, it's part of my job to educate everyone and try to make, they asked me in the trial can I administer an election under SB 90? And yes, I can. And I said, it's still easy to vote in Florida. We still have 3 ways to vote. It hasn't changed. And I hope that the voters won't even realize SB 90 was passed.
Thank you. The only requirement that SB 90 had that impacts the League of Women Voters is when we register a voter. Before, we used to be able to hand all registration forms over to you, and you would disseminate to the proper counties.
Correct.
Now, if someone is at a festival and we register them from Charlotte County, we are responsible to taking it to the supervisor of election in Charlotte County.
Correct. Yeah, and that's one of the things in the law. And if we happen to get a registration that's outside our county, no worries, we'll take care of it.
Well, you have that, you are able to do that, whereas the league is not.
Yeah. But I'm talking about if the league turned in something to us and there happened to be mistakenly one put in there, we'll make sure it gets taken care of.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yeah. And yeah, that's one, and that in the, you know, the judge's ruling could change that. I don't know. I think he could rule on certain provisions and change certain provisions. But this is something that can be changed through legislator action also, if we can lobby us on it. And probably after this election and down the road, if it's problematic, I'm sure it may come back up again.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
Thank you, Tommy, for helping us through these interesting times. And we understand a lot more than we did. And thanks to Clara Ann for setting up the meeting. I'd like to thank all of the members and guests for being with us this morning. And I'd like to ask any league members who are bored next Saturday morning to join us at the Bonita Springs Utilities Operations Center to help count their ballots. They've had an election for board members. We would work from about 9 to 2, depending on how many of us there are. And it's actually kind of fun. If you would like to join us, you can call me or email me. And I'll set you up with a map so you know how to get there.
What's that board?
Yeah, Bonita Springs Utilities, the utilities company, has an election for board members every year.
We
And we
looked
count
at running their election, but have people that are not citizens and registered voters, so it was problematic. So we could code their ballot, and then they could vote. We could tabulate it for them, but everybody has to be a registered voter, and that, you know, everybody's not in the citizens in Bonita Springs.
I'm a Bonita Springs. This is Clara Ann. I'm a Bonita Springs resident, and it's all on who are pay the bill to the Bonita Springs
Exactly,
utilities.
they're all
for the
members of
voters.
that board. members
And
of that
that's why they
association.
don't have to
Right.
be registered voters.
That's same way with Lee County Electric Co-op and stuff, those corporations.
No, and then there's also the Women's March.
The Women's March is the following week on the 19th at the Alliance for the Arts. If anyone would like to help with that, please give us a call or email and you can join us then.
Mr. Dole, excuse me, Mr. Dole, are you going to be registering voters at the Women's March?
I'd have to check with my community education service. If you want somebody there, call the community education service department, and I'm sure, and I'll let them know you may be calling, or I'll reach out. Juan Diaz is the director over there, and I'm sure he'd be glad to set it up.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Sarah.
That's fine. Is there anything else?
Just a question for Murray Newton. What's the date for the Bonita Springs utility count? It's March 12th. Yeah. Okay.
Next Saturday. Next Saturday from 9 till 2-ish. And it's fun and they provide snacks. And for those who are still concerned about COVID precautions, whatever is in place at that time will be upheld. Does anybody else have anything to add before we, oh, Lana? Unmute, Lana, unmute.
Sorry. Is the league able to register voters? Is not the league able to register voters here?
That's a good question. Claire Ann?
Yes, but again, we have to remember what I had just mentioned about SB 90.
I probably don't.
Oh, okay.
I walked out of the room.
All right, like at a festival, like let's say Women's March.
Yeah.
And we have participants from Collier County and we have participants from Charlotte County.
Yeah. So mailing
And
the ballots in.
if you really need to go through an interview process to find out if they're in Lee County, if they're in Charlotte or Collier County, I would suggest that you give them guidance on registering online. Because as I had said with Mr. Doyle, if you register a individual that live in Charlotte County or an individual that lives in Collier County, you have to take that registration form to the supervisor of elections in that county.
And what's the deadline? How soon after you get it?
14 days.
What?
14 days. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Mr. Dole?
Yeah, 14 days.
2 weeks to get it from Lee County or wherever you are to the other counties.
Correct. It has to go to the like supervisor of elections office. Like
Okay,
in Collier County, it's all the way to Naples, at the far end of Naples.
okay. And can you also do it online with the registrant? The
I
person
don't
who's.
think the third party, I think the thing about third party, they have a third party registration number that goes on those applications. They get credit for registering voters. Online, you would not get credit.
Wait a minute.
Exactly.
Wait, who gets credit?
League of Women's Voters, we get credit for their association for registering voters. I think that's a big statistic that they like to see.
That because each our League of Women Voters registration form has a League of Women Voters ID number. And before you can register voters, you must take the educational workshop that the league has online before you can register voters and pass a test.
And you have to do that how often?
As far as I know, you can do it just once unless there's a major change. And in this case, there's a major change. And if you are registering voters, you cannot give them a form with the League of Women Voters ID. You can't do that.
Can you stand with a person who is registering and do it online on their phones with them?
You can, but the League of Women's Voters will not get credit.
And
But
I'm
that
not.
wouldn't-
Okay, I'll talk to the league about that. I'm not sure what that means.
Oh, this is
Yeah,
Sandy.
anybody can register online. You just have to have your Florida ID and driver's license.
Right.
And it actually made it easier online because you used to have to do both, but now you just have to do one. Every mailing we have has a barcode on it that can be scanned and go right to the web page to request your vote by mail, register to vote, change your status, whatever. We got a big election coming up. It's a primary election, and remember, we're closed primary. We have probably close to 160,000 NPAs that will not be able to vote for a Democratic nominee or a Republican nominee. So it would be great to get those NPAs, because we're going to have a lot of NPAs coming to the polls going like, I can't vote for the governor. I can't vote, in the Democrat or Republican side. And a lot of them don't realize that this is a closed primary.
Just to enlighten people, the NPA you're referring to is non-party affiliation, correct?
Yeah, it's not, a lot of people call it independent, but independent is a minor party registered with the state. No party affiliate is just, you don't want to be part of a major party or minor party.
So that's interesting, Tommy. I think at the beginning you shared there were 500,000 registered voters. So over 30% cannot participate in the first
And
screen.
I think if you look at our website, you can see the statistics. And I didn't look at them today, but we've got a total of probably close to 510,000. Unless Mary Beth said that some of them came off here recently. But there's about 135,000 registered Democrats, and NPAs there's over 150,000. And if you go statewide, we are about 50% There's 5 million Democrats, 5 million Republicans, and almost 4 million NPAs. So it's a big number.
So I have a question. I'm an NPA. Could I change my registration before election day? And then change?
29 days, you got till 29 days before the primary election. You can change it to a party. And then if you want to change it back, because the general doesn't matter. Then you can, I would just wait till after the general. If you want to go back to the NPA, you can.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
This is Sandy Frank. If I could just clarify a couple things that I heard, maybe they were clarified, but the League of Women Voters primary goal is to get people registered. It would be nice to get credit, but anytime we can help people to register, that's what we would try to do, I believe. And for those of you who took the test in prior years, you have to retake it. Anyone, because of SB 90, everyone has to retake the test. Nobody can act for the league to register voters without taking the new test and passing it. With 100%, I think you have to pass it.
Who gives the test?
League of
It's
Women
on-
Voters of
It's
Florida.
online, League of Women Voters, it's online.
Oh, so we give the test to our members or
No,
whoever. else.
you have to dial in to the League of Women Voters of Florida's website where it
Oh.
says to take a test. And then you're educated, and then you take the test. Then you are okay you're notified that you can register voters for the League of Women Voters.
And
But you cannot register voters until you've completed the process.
So does every organization who registers voters have to take this test?
I have no idea. This is the requirement of League of Women Voters.
And we've included this information maybe several months ago, but obviously we'll include it in our member communications about the process.
Lana, I don't think all parties have to take the test, but they have to be familiar with the law.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay.
Any other questions? This whole discussion seems to grow every time someone asks one question.
Well, that's good. That's good. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's important stuff.
Yeah.
Anything else, anyone? Well, then I will close the meeting by saying, we hope any of you who have participated who are not members of the league will join the league, and that includes Mr. Doyle. Since the 1970s. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see. Hello? Yes? Phone number?
Yeah, 239.
689, whatever. She's gone. We will remind you all that next month we will be talking about climate change. Again, it will be a virtual meeting, after which we will have our league annual meeting, which is an important time for us in the league year. Thank you all for coming and have a good rest of your weekend. Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.